just as promised, the weirdness continues. What is going on, my peeps? Welcome back to another pumpkin spice video. We only got 2 more of these left, so enjoy them now because they won't be around for that much longer. So as I was searching through my comments as I do for a video idea this week, I came across these 2 from Elizabeth and Robin suggesting that I do pumpkin spice ravioli, and considering I've got stuff like pumpkin spice toothpaste and body scrub and candles, I figured this was just some crazy idea that they came up with. But no, this is actually a real thing. There's videos on YouTube of people making recipes of this, professional chefs giving pumpkin ravioli masterclasses, and this one right here is actually the recipe that I'm gonna be following today. So, Rich Mancini, this one's on you. Let's get right into it. Now guys, there's a bunch of different parts of this that we're gonna have to make homemade. We gotta make the pasta, the filling, we're gonna make a brown butter sauce at the end. It's a lot, but we'll dissect it and get through it all. I'm gonna start with the pasta dough, and for that I used some unbleached flour and hot water, sea salt and pure olive oil, 2 eggs, of course some pumpkin pie spice, and some orange food coloring. So let us begin. I started by sifting out some of that unbleached flour just to get out any impurities or lumps. I made a well with my hand in the center of that, and in the middle I added in some salt, some olive oil. I grabbed those 2 eggs, cracked them in a separate bowl and gave them a little whisk, and then added them in just like Rich did. I then began to throw some of the flour onto the wet ingredients and give it a bit of a mix with my hand. And once you get to about here, you want to start adding in your hot water. A little bit at a time, mixing between each time you add until you get to a solid mass like this, at which point I threw it out on my countertop and gave it a really good kneading. And once it gets nice and smooth like this is your basic pasta dough. And as I got to about here, it was the point in which I remembered I forgot to add the food coloring and the pumpkin pie spice. Excuse me one moment while I, of course, had to repeat all of those steps that I just showed you. The only difference being adding in that pumpkin pie spice at the end and adding in the orange food dye into the hot water, adding that in, blah blah blah. And we got back to here with a nice light orange peach colored pasta dough. And just like the last one, I wrapped this in some plastic wrap and set it off to the side while we started to work on the filling. And for some of you, this might come as a surprise, but we're actually using a legit pie pumpkin for this. I started by trying to skin the outside of it, which is harder than you might think. I also have never seen a peeled pumpkin before. That might be a first for some of you also. But once I had it done, I chopped it up, I tried to scoop out all the nasty insides, and then roughly chop the entire thing up into about 1-inch cubes, try to get these all to the same size so that they cook evenly. It was at this point where I gathered a pot of boiling water with no salt or anything added into it, tossed in all of my cubes of pumpkin, and allowed those to boil away like potatoes until they get nice and soft and kind of fall off your fork like this. I want to say that took about 12 to 15 minutes. I was then able to drain out all the chunks of pumpkin into my colander, let them rest for a little bit to cool down, and then just finish them off in a blender and thoroughly pureed these things pretty much for 10 minutes through. Like, you want this as smooth as possible. And now we can actually add everything else to the puree that we need to finish off the filling. I tossed in about a tablespoon of salt, about a teaspoon of pepper, a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, a few tablespoons of Parmesan cheese, and to finish it off, a little bit of some Italian breadcrumbs. Apparently this will soak up some of that excess moisture so that the ravioli won't leak if you go to freeze it or just when you're cooking it, so we shall see. But after I got that all mixed up pretty thoroughly with my hand mixer for about 2 minutes, I allowed that to chill in my fridge for a while I prepared the pasta dough. So back over to my pasta dough, I grabbed my mound, which looked pretty good at this point. I tossed out some flour and rolled it out. Obviously, if you have a pasta maker that could roll this for you, it would be quite a bit easier, but I do not, as always. I'm ratchet, what can I say? And I think I might have gotten to a point where this is workable, so I found this ravioli tin on Amazon for I think $16. We'll see if it's worth it. I tossed the dough over top of that and kind of lightly pressed down all the wells of the ravioli with this plastic piece that came with the tray. Next up, I grabbed a piping bag and filled that up with my pumpkin puree mix and slowly piped each individual well of our ravioli tin. So far, so good, guys. I've always been a little bit intimidated of making homemade pasta, especially ravioli, but I think we're doing okay. So once I had the second layer of dough on top of that, I tried to push it down with my fingers, eventually using just a rolling pin, because obviously that's a lot easier. And once I tapped the tray on my countertop, these things actually fell out pretty easily. Back over onto my stove, I got some more boiling water and tossed in that ravioli for about 4 minutes. You do not want to leave these longer than that. This is fresh pasta, so these things will just be a pile of mush. And after very carefully removing them and straining them, we could start to work on our brown butter sauce. Here is where 90% of you are about to be disgusted. In a whole separate pan, I started with 2 whole sticks of butter. Here's a little bit of information a lot of you might not know and probably don't want to know. I worked in an Italian restaurant for about 4 or 5 years. The majority of sauces, especially cream sauces, are straight butter and heavy cream. That is it. There's nothing else. It's pretty much just straight fat. Like if you get a portion of pasta in a big bowl like this, you probably ate a whole stick of butter, I'm not gonna lie. But back over to what we're doing right now. Now I just tried to plate these up like I'm some prissy professional chef. A couple ravioli, some of that sauce, and some Parmesan cheese. These don't look half bad, so let's give them a try. So I picked out a couple of the best looking ones. There's very little sauce on them because they absorbed most of it. If you like butter, that sauce is for you. So here's a close-up, ladies and gents, if it ever focuses. The filling is very yellow. It's just pretty much straight pumpkin with spice in it. But in the name of research, I don't really want to eat this, but I did not like that. I can already tell that the pumpkin pie spice in the pasta just absolutely threw everything off. It's cooked really well. Honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of that filling either. It just resembled mashed up pumpkin. As an official meal though, and the first time I'm ever making fresh pasta, you gotta give me a little bit of props. But as a whole, I'm gonna have to give this like a 5 out of 10. Hope you guys enjoyed this week's Monday video. If you did, leave me a like. You guys always hook me up with those. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter. Let me know what BuzzFeed test you want me to do for this Friday. We got 2 weeks left, so stay pumped. And other than that, have an awesome beginning of your week. I'll see you right back here